Nature. It was all good. Then we screwed it up. And now we're working to fix it. Doesn't that apply to so many things?
Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet, about a third of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening, and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Hello, Carol. Did you get rain yesterday? I did.
I did not.
Oh, you're going to get it today, aren't you?
Nope. There's no rain in the forecast until Thursday.
Oh.
Which is kind of sad. That's when our garden club, we're supposed to meet outside at the park and have like a little picnic. And they were going to hike through this park where we meet usually I guess we'll do it in the rain.
Well, you'll figure out something. So we always appreciate the rain, right?
That's right.
So do you want to hear about my garden?
Absolutely.
So I was busy. I was really busy this week. I worked on repotting and cutting back my pelargoniums. That's geraniums. To put them in the greenhouse for winter. And I also brought some indoors. And Bill worked on the greenhouse door because that door always has issues because, it's wood. I mean, If you think about greenhouses are uninsulated wooden houses with lots of windows that you set out in the middle of the garden. They have water in them. You know what I mean?
Yes. And wood tends to have issues.
Well, yeah.
But before you go on from your pelargoniums, I did read an article last week, a blog post from National Garden Clubs from Peggy Riccio, whom we both know.
Riccio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. About how she brings in pelargoniums without a greenhouse. So I am going to make a note to link to that because I think people like me without a greenhouse who want to save their pelargoniums might find it useful.
Yes, they might. And I also brought mine indoors. You can bring pelargoniums indoors.
Absolutely.
You do not need a greenhouse.
Nope.
So I brought some indoors. He worked on the door. He put an automatic closer on it because in the past it's blown open. And when I've been out of town, and one time I lost everything in it. So it's got
sad.
Yeah, that was a sad year. And I never told my son that he didn't get it latched because I thought he would be sad. I also planted Viburnum cayuga that I bought at Bob Scott's nursery. And he asked me to wait to plant it in fall because it wasn't well rooted. It had just been dug up and put into a pot. And it's an interesting cross. And so we might talk about it another time, but it's small. It gets 4 to 10 feet tall and wide, which is small for a viburnum.
That is small for a viburnum.
I have a viburnum that I planted next to my house that was a gift plant, and I need to dig that up. It's too big. Anyway, it's a profuse bloomer. It has 4-inch snowball-shaped clusters of fragrant blooms in spring. We'll see. I planted it over by my bedroom. And then I also planted a new Proven Winners hydrangea that I'm pretty excited about called Fairy Tale Bride Cascade. It's a new type, and it cascades. So I'm excited about that.
I'm kind of jealous that they didn't send me that. They sent me some lovely hydrangeas, but I didn't get that one. I assume Did
you get Let's Dance Big Band?
No.
Okay, so I got those two. What did you get? Do you remember? I know I'm asking you off the cuff. Do you need to look at your notes?
They're dwarfs. I'll have to look at my notes, and I will find out what they sent me. I will remember it, and I will put it in the show notes. But they're nice. They're nice. But
I'm sure. Well, they have so many hydrangeas now.
I know.
I mean, there's so many, and I have so many in my garden. Anyway, that second one was a hydrangea microphylla or macrophylla. I don't do well with those smooth, big leaf hydrangeas. We'll see how it does. It also arrived here really parched, but the 2 inches of rain last night should help. That's what I did. Oh, and I spread flower seeds in the upper pasture before it rained last night. So I've been a busy girl.
You have been busy. So I've spent an hour a day, like I said, lots of weeding. I did move around a few perennials, including some daylilies. And I told you that they just weren't thriving where they were. And I think they had just gotten overcrowded. And so along the one edge of my vegetable garden is like a border that doesn't have much in it. And I thought, you know what? I know there's some daffodils right on the edge. I'm going to I'm just going to start digging up some of these daylilies and planting them over there. So I started that yesterday. And hopefully
I'm looking at your notes. You dug up Amsonia?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Brutal.
I'm getting to that.
Sorry. I looked ahead. I didn't mean to. Go ahead.
So, that's one of the problems is this Amsonia that I had planted. And I have this perennial border. I call it Plopper's Field, as you know, because I plop in perennials wherever there's a bare spot. So this works pretty well if it's a perennial that is easy to move, if it's like in the wrong spot. But Amsonia is a spreader.
and hard to move.
Well, I didn't say I moved it. I said I dug it out. I threw it in the trash. So
yeah, because it's just really, really aggressive in your garden. Now, which one is it? Is it the one with the real ferny leaves?
No.
Or is it the one with the big leaves?
I think it's a straight species.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how you dug that out.
Well, I don't know if I dug it out well enough, but what I did is I just started at the edge because it had become a mass that was about 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. And it was like swallowing up other stuff. Can't have that. Cannot have that kind of misbehavior in that particular garden. Now, I've got 2 others that I managed to keep contained that are fine in another spot. I just got the shovel up under there and I just dug and I know I didn't get all the roots.
Right.
But I got a lot of roots and it's down to bare ground. And so I will not rush to plant a bunch of stuff there this fall. In the spring, I will see if shoots start to come up and then I will just simply dig again. But I spent about an hour yesterday. Mm-hmm. And most of that, figuring out my technique, how am I going to do this? And then I spent an hour earlier this morning and I'm like, I finished the job.
I'm impressed you did it that fast. Remember when I dug out the liriope? It took me 3 days of digging. Yeah. And I've found another place where it spread, which makes no sense because I've never ever planted liriope in my garden. So it traveled in. But anyway, I'm impressed that you dug that out. That's a hard thing to dig. Mine is my straight species one or storm cloud, whichever one it is, the one with the thicker leaves. It is kind of over all by itself, hemmed in by 2 railroad ties, and it never has gotten that big. But I don't like that type anymore anyway. I like the ones with the ferny leaves.
And I had the oddest feeling or idea. I thought, so right outside my den window that I'm looking at, I mean, it's straight south, hardly any shade. And it's just like everything struggles there, everything. So there's some hydrangeas. Bobo is there. Bobo's struggles. And I thought, you know what? I bet Amsonia would grow nicely there and it wouldn't struggle. But
no, I thought, it wouldn't. It's a prairie plant.
But I thought, no.
But you need to move Bobo. Bobo deserves better than a south-facing exposure. Oh, poor Bobo.
Anyway, the other thing is it's really been, I'll say, an unseasonably warm fall.
Oh, you think? Yeah.
So
I went 90.
It's not 90, but today it's going to be in the mid 80s. And then after today, our extended forecast, we go to the 70s. And then by next week, the high should be in the 60s, which October in Indiana, the average high is 65. I looked it all up. And then I thought, man, we are nowhere near a frost. And so I looked that up and I said before that October 10th was our average frost date. Mm-hmm. And actually they said it's October 17th. And that means patchy frost, which is we're likely to have a temperature around 36.
Right.
And I looked at the extended forecast and depends on which weather place you're looking at. We might get pretty close next week to the upper 30s. So fall is moving along, but I am swearing by an hour a day. Just get out there and do something for an hour and you'd be amazed. I'm amazed what I've gotten done.
I am too. I shared that picture on our Instagram of you spending an hour a day and it looks really good. And I have to say last week, I spent an hour a day for about 5 days. And so now that I'm not taking clients anymore until spring, I have more time to work in my garden. Amazing how that works.
And some days I will admit it was more than an hour, but I figure if you can get an hour in, so like I got the hour in today and I've got a bunch of stuff to do this afternoon, so I don't worry about it. But anyway, let's move on because I didn't set a timer at all. I didn't.
Well, our listeners said they like them when they're longer. So I have a feeling
we may go on a little bit today.
Today's going to be longer because our notes are extensive.
Anyway, to back up, Ploppers Field is now, I designated as my English style perennial border. So anything that goes in there must be easy to remove if it doesn't fit. And the exception is Baptisia. I've got a couple in there, but they're by the fence and they're not necessarily spreaders the way Amsonia is. So that is Ploppers Field. And I took no before and after pictures. And I thought I should have taken a before and after picture. But I was too I'm doing this.
Oh, well.
I will do a quote now for you. No spring nor summer's beauty hath such grace as I have seen in one autumnal face. John Donne, Elegy 9, The Autumnal.
Well, that's sweet.
It is.
That's all I'm going to say.
It's our fall theme, I guess. I didn't look up anything about it.
I would say I have an autumnal face. It's looking a little puffy today. Okay, so our flower this week, we're talking about asters, goldenrods, and pollinators. Oh my. So we're talking about the stars of the later fall garden, which I'm going to do a post this week called The Late Late Show. And it won't be for Garden Bloggers Bloom Day, which is on the 15th. It'll come out on Wednesday. And I've been waiting because I'm waiting for actually my Ryan's pink mums to bloom and my Sheffields to bloom, but they aren't blooming yet for some reason. But we aren't talking about mums particularly. We are talking about asters, goldenrods, and pollinators. So let's talk about goldenrod. Solidago.
Yes, and for the 1000th time, goldenrod does not cause hay fever. It blooms at the same time as ragweed, which causes hay fever. Goldenrod has a heavy, sticky pollen, and if you stand by goldenrod, you will see so many different pollinators all over it.
Yeah, remember when we talked about the ecoregions and it was considered the second most important plant in our ecoregion, which I thought was kind of amazing. So I have goldenrod several places in my garden. I have several different varieties. I don't remember all their names anymore because I don't care. And I just don't, it's goldenrod for goodness sake. I know I had fireworks at some point. Some of them have come and gone, but I do have one new one and you have one that's named. But I wanted to say about goldenrod, people cut it out of their gardens and it's been taken out of roadsides by mowing because people thought it is about having, that it's pollen gets you. The truth is anything that is pollinated by an insect does not have the kind of pollen that gives you hay fever.
Correct.
Things that are wind pollinated give you hay fever. And I discovered through Steve Owens at Bustani that we have 3 native ragweeds in Oklahoma, which is why September was so miserable. 3, not just 1, 3.
Nice. I don't know how many we have in Indiana. I didn't look
Probably
it up.
3. Probably the same as we do. So anyway, it just was depressing. And so let's move on. Your favorite and only goldenrod is?
Solar Cascade. Solidago shortii. Solar Cascade. And this goldenrod was thought to be extinct. It only existed like on some weird limestone bluff overlooking the Ohio River in a secret location by Louisville, Kentucky. And they discovered it. And the folks at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden took seeds and propagated it. And it's in the trade as Solar Cascade. And it's listed in its native habitat as an endangered plant. So
that's cool.
It is very cool. And it's called Cascade because it kind of leans over as it blooms.
Right. And, it has a leaning branch, which is really pretty.
Right.
But it's a beautiful one.
The Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, and I always think about it as the Cincinnati Botanical Garden because I've been there a couple of times and I keep forgetting to look at the animals because there's, this is where they have Fiona the hippo or whatever. No. Yeah.
Oh, heck, Fiona the hippo. Know.
Anyway,
Who cares?
All I'm saying is these guys, they do some stuff with endangered species to try to get them propagated and into the trade. So I did have another goldenrod, I will confess. And this spring I yanked it all out because I think it was just a weird native one that showed up. And I'm like,
did it spread by underground runners?
Oh, they all spread by underground runners. Yeah.
Well, there's certain ones that aren't as bad as others. I have one that just tries to take over areas of the garden. And so I pull it out periodically, but it's easy to pull up. It's not like Amsonia. So in mine, the latest one I added was one called Golden Torch. We're going to link to both of these. It's and I don't know how it can be called Golden Torch and then be told that it is an unidentified species of goldenrod. So in other words, they don't know which one it is. They don't know if it's shorty eye or if it's, one of the other goldenrods. It's just part of the Solidago genus. The reason I grow it is it was originally collected in the Wichita Mountains of southwestern Oklahoma. I also have a Monarda from the Wichita Mountains, and I have them in like the prairie sections of my garden, which my garden is getting more prairie like all the time because A, it's easy to take care of.
Yeah.
And B, it doesn't need a ton of water. And we're just in a weird time where we're really, really dry and hot. So I need it to be, anyway, mine's upright growing. It says, but I don't think it's that upright growing.
I don't think any goldenrod is really that upright because if you don't cut them back in the spring, like we do to shorten them and get them to send out more flower spikes, they are going to lean. And Solar Cascade leans beautifully.
Yeah, this one leans too. And so you need to plant something next to your goldenrod for it to lean into, even if you do cut it back. Anyway, it's really, really pretty. It looks really good. I got my plant from High Country Gardens for those who want to know.
Very nice.
And I bought it. Unlike our hydrangeas that were sent to us by Proven Winners.
Exactly.
Although I have bought things from Proven Winners too. So.
And I didn't buy Solar Cascade. I mean, I literally got a 3-inch pot with one little piece, and I really do like it. And
Who did you get it from?
The Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. I went down there.
They sent it to you.
Well, I went down there with GardenCom, had a regional meeting there once, and they gave us all one. They told the story about it, and then they gave us each a plant. And so I brought it home and planted it.
Did you just say all this and I missed it completely?
Parts of it, maybe.
Okay. But, all right. Well, I'm glad to know that you are letting it grow in your garden because it sounds like it's an important plant.
Right.
So is that all we want to say about goldenrod other than it's really pretty in the fall?
And you know what else is pretty in the fall? Asters. We love the asters.
Yeah. And my garden is just one big aster haven.
I wish mine had more.
Well, you can add them. Believe me, I've added a bunch to mine. And now they all just pollinate with each other because of the honeybees. And so I might even have an aster nobody has, because there's so many.
Yeah. And I told you last week that Alma Potchki, which is a dark pink, it's disappeared. The only thing in my garden are these purple ones that came from my Aunt Marjorie, gave me a start. And so they're in like 3 or 4 different places. And I'm just going to let them reseed and come up periodically in different places. They're not that terrible to dig out. And in fact,
they're pretty easy.
A lot of asters do the donut thing where the middle dies out. So you want to divide them up every once in a while anyway.
So the asters that do that, I think, are the New England type.
Yes, that's all I have.
Okay, the ones that live here really well are the ones that are like the heath asters, and they just kind of march across the deal. And then the smooth asters, and the smooth asters are, I think they're, hang on, I have to let my cat out. He's driving me insane.
Okay. So Dee, let your cat out, and I'll keep the audience entertained here for a little bit. Oh, wait, there, you're back already.
Yeah, because I sit right by my door. But
I was just about to tell him inside 6 scoops about Dee but never mind.
I don't know. There isn't anything people don't know about Dee. So my favorite aster is Bluebird. And Bluebird is a smooth aster, which is a Symphyotrichum leve. Am I saying that right?
I guess.
Leve. So most of the asters that are native to the United States, except for maybe the New England asters, but I might be wrong, they are Symphyotrichums. And I may not even be saying that right. But I don't care.
The New England asters are Symphyotrichums too.
Okay, so then they're all that now. And I don't know how they decided that, and I can spell it, but saying it is harder. Anyway, Bluebird is really pretty, and it attracts everybody, and it's kind of a late blooming aster. And so right now it's kind of a bluish purple, and October Skies is nice too. And then I have Heath asters.
I had October Skies. You know what? I shouldn't say this. It got a terrible fungus of some kind and kind of died out.
Just died out.
Like, ooh, that's not good.
Well, some of the monk asters did that here. Yeah, I think you should stick to the ones that really work there.
You know, the story about Aunt Marjorie's, I think I've told this before. She gave me a start of it, and she said, I got this from your dad. And I'm like, huh? My dad never had asters growing. And she said, he didn't like it because it didn't have a neat enough habit for him. And my dad did like things nice and neat, you know.
Liked a neat garden. Tidy.
And so I'm like, well, it's Aunt Marjorie's, but it was really once my dad's, and I got it back.
I actually have never heard that story. So
there's the story.
Go. New story. So we love asters. We'd love for you to plant them too. Just remember, they're not tidy plants. You cannot really control them. You can cut them back, but they still do whatever the heck they want to.
Exactly. Which is, sometimes in a garden, that's going to be okay.
Well, that way no one knows you have weeds because everything you grow looks like a weed.
Exactly.
All right. Another great pollinator food source. Carol's going to vote for.
I'm going to vote for good old Agastacchi Blue Fortune, what we talked about, and how you keep buying it because I told you it was great. That thing will be more. I know you did. That thing will be the last thing blooming this fall, and the bees will be on it and butterflies until the very, very end. And so when I said that, I thought, oh, wait. But I also want to give a shout out to the good old zinnias.
Thank goodness for the zinnias.
Oh, I love me the zinnias. They look so pretty in the garden right now. So pretty.
Some of mine are looking a little tired because it got really hot here and they had water problems, but they still are blooming, even though they look tired.
They're going like crazy.
Give it up for a flower that keeps on blooming, even though it's basically done. And I'd say Agastacchi Blue Fortune is the same way, or Agastache. Pronounce it any way you want to.
You want to make a gardener feel like a big success, and we talked about this before, just hand them a packet of zinnia seeds and say, sow these seeds. You cannot fail.
You cannot fail. And then maybe later we'll talk about garden mums another week.
Yeah, they deserve talk because I think when it comes to garden mums, sort of the industry has ruined them for some people because of the way they've treated them.
Yeah.
But we will endeavor to convince people that garden mums deserve a place in the garden.
Real good garden mums. Pass alongs.
Real one.
All right. Next quote. Autumn repays the earth the leaves which summer lent it. George Christoph Lichtenberg from the 1700s.
I know. That's weird, isn't it?
And apparently I can't say the word summer. But anyway, it is true. That's true. The leaves
Autumn
are
repays the earth the leaves which summer lent it.
See, it's hard to say, isn't it?
It is. Well, it was originally written in German, and that's a translation.
Oh, that's why it doesn't flow. Okay, so we're going to talk about, for our veggie deal, about leaves and vegetable gardens.
Yeah, and so there is, all the talk on, I assume on social media, and the articles are like, don't be too quick to clean up your garden. Don't be too quick to clean up your garden because there are so many insects that overwinter in leaf debris and little nooks and crannies in the garden and in stems of perennials and stuff. But when it comes to the vegetable garden, we're going to tell you, clean that sucker up. Do not leave your tomatoes on, vines till spring, squash, clean all that up, get rid of it because you don't want insect pests of your vegetable garden to overwinter. And you are not going to kill off the ecosystem of the planet by cleaning up your vegetable garden.
No, in fact, you're doing it a favor because you'll get rid of a lot of pests, garden pests, and like squash bugs and squash vine borers. I mean, you won't completely get rid of them. They're a total menace in Oklahoma, but you'll get rid of some of them. If you leave that stuff around, it's not good. And then, if you have shredded leaves, put them back on the vegetable garden afterwards. And we need to talk a little bit about leaving the leaves because in Oklahoma, our leaves are mostly oak leaves. I mean, we have elm trees and hackberries and some other things, but mostly we have oak trees, and the oak trees are from I'm not an expert, but I'll just say in my land, they're post oaks and blackjacks for the most part. Those are the most tough fibrous leaves on the planet. I'm not saying scrape them all up and shred them, but you can shred some of them and then leave them around the edges of your property. Because if you leave those in your garden beds, just in situ, as they like to say, you will have a huge problem because they will not break down by spring. We don't get enough rain. We don't get enough snow normally, and they just don't break down fast enough. So you do have to shred them. If you have elm tree, you can leave those. Those will go away.
Yeah, I have red maples. And
those are fine too.
The honey locusts, you don't even have to rake those things up. They're so small. They just sort of disappear.
Yeah, we have those too.
Yeah. But the oaks, you can shred those up. Or, if you have an area that's just, you can just leave them.
That's what I was thinking.
Leave them because there are still insects overwintering in the oak leaves. And we'll get to that in the book. So if you have a place where you can just leave them and then late in the spring, come back and deal with them, that would even be better.
Right. So if you have an area that you can push them to in the back of your property, that'd be great. But if you have a spouse who's obsessed with a Bermuda lawn, they're not going to let you do that. I'm just saying, because it'll smother even Bermuda.
Yes. But here's the other thing. Most oaks around here hold their leaves all the way till spring anyway. So there's not going to be that many to rake up.
Yeah, some of them do here too.
They hold them until spring. So the other thing I was going to say, the other thing, oh my gosh, Dee,
weeds,
the opportunistic, and I'll call them fall into winter, early spring weeds. I am already seeing so much henbit coming up in that vegetable garden. It's like, I got to knock those things back, smother those beds with leaves again. I got to knock those back or I will have henbit everywhere.
Right. In your vegetable garden. Yes. It's okay to have it in your lawn, but in your vegetable garden, it's not good.
No. So weed. And then I put the weeds in the trash. I'll admit it.
Some weeds need to go in the trash because some of them, like the one I'm pulling, Persicaria longicida, which is called Asiatic smartweed, bristly lady's thumb, Oriental lady's thumb, etc.
Yep. I have a little bit of that.
Spread everywhere in my garden during August, and it breaks off really easily and it roots along the stems where they land on the ground. So every hour that I'm spending in the garden, I'm pulling out that stuff because it is bad. And guess where it came from?
Bad. Asia.
Guess where it came from?
Asia.
China.
Yeah. The mulberry weed. That stuff just hides. That hides, and I find it. And I'm like, you're going to the trash.
And then there's that other weed which I didn't identify. I took a picture of it, but I didn't identify it. It's the one that's kind of pretty, and it comes up and it turns bronzy in the fall. And I'll take a picture of it for next week.
Lamb's quarter.
I have some of that. No, not lamb's quarter. It turns yellow.
This has got bronzy.
Yeah, and I took pictures I would show it to you, but I took pictures with my big camera, so I'll have to upload those, and then I'll figure out what it is. I'll talk about it next week.
Yeah. So if you want to read more about the insects that overwinter in leaves and how to successfully leave leaves to rot and everything, the Xerces. Yeah. Their website, they have a lot of information about overwintering insects in leaf litter and why it's important to leave things kind of alone and let them overwinter. I mean, everybody makes a big deal about the monarchs and because they migrate, but so many of our butterflies do not migrate. They overwinter in leaf litter. And so
do fireflies.
Yeah. Fireflies, you need leaf litter for them to overwinter. So, don't be the kind of person that does everything for the monarchs and then cleans up every leaf in your garden. It's kind of being a hypocrite.
Oh, wow. Bossy today.
Woo!
Okay. Are you going to do the next quote?
I am. Every oak tree started out as a couple of nuts who stood their ground. by Henry David Thoreau. That doesn't really sound like a Thoreau quote.
No, it doesn't. But it sounds like something somebody attributed to him, but that's okay. I still think it's funny.
It's sort of like the Abraham Lincoln quote about where he said, "Don't believe everything on the internet."
Yeah, that one.
Oh,
yeah.
But anyway, I went to I got my new library branch. So I go in there and I get actual physical books, not just ebooks now. And I found this book over in the ecology section called The Nature of Oaks, The Rich Ecology of Our Most Essential Native Trees. And it's by Douglas Tallamy, who we've talked about before. It's his new one. It's his new book because he talks a lot about the oak trees and the value of oak trees. I mean, literally coast to coast.
Oak trees are really important.
They are very important. And so he talks about, he has a sort of interweaves some stories and stuff, but just talks about the insects you'll find on an oak. And he starts in October and he goes all the way to September. And just month by month, it's just amazing. All the different insects that are, aided and abetted by oak trees or eat on them or whatever. And they don't really damage the oak because these insects evolved with the oak. So it's not like a foreign pest has come in.
Right. I remember that from one of his other books. It might have been Bringing Nature Home, which we're also going to talk about a little bit. He walked around an oak tree in his yard and just took stock of all the insects that were on that tree.
Yes. And that's what's in this book.
That was
now.
eye-opening to me. I didn't realize how. So when I first moved out here and loved living out here with Bill.
Yeah.
And I loved having kind of a homestead experience. But over the 33 years I've lived out here, I now see it as this very important ecosystem that I hope somebody takes over when I'm done. That's why I'm making it easier to garden.
That's good.
Because we have all these great oak trees and elm trees, and we have a red maple, and I keep planting new things too.
So the book is really, really excellent. A lot of good information. He talks about masting when all the oaks produce acorns at the same time in great quantities. Nobody knows why. They have hypotheses, but there's no way to really prove one over the other. Talks about how blue jays will disperse oak or acorns all around.
Didn't know that.
Did not know that. And I was thinking about, I feed peanuts to blue jays in the wintertime. And there's an oak tree just right on my front yard over to the side. I planted an oak tree and it had a bunch of acorns last year.
Yeah, mine had a ton of acorns last year. This year was not as much, but my trees, got damaged so much by the storm. It'll be interesting to see how they come back from that, which we actually talked about on that Oklahoma gardening episode, the last one.
We'll link to that, by the way. One other thing he said, this was kind of a surprise. He says, if you want to plant an oak tree, his suggestion is to start with an acorn.
That really surprised me.
Because he said oaks have a reputation for being slow growing, but they're not that slow growing. But he said and he has information in the book about how to start an acorn, and you kind of have to protect it from rabbits and different things early in its life. And then squirrels. But he says if you are interested in oaks, but are afraid that one will get too big and then one day just fall over onto your house, he said plant 3 or more about 10 feet apart, and the interlocking roots below ground will help to stabilize them. And then because they are 10 feet apart, they will not get as big as other oaks, which, Dee, that gave me a big idea.
Uh-oh. Are you going to talk about it now, or are you going to wait?
No, I'll tell you about it now. So, in the center of my backyard, kind of, that provides most of the shade is that gigantic honey locust that I planted. And it's been attacked every year by mimosa webworms. Right. And so my neighbors are spraying their trees, and I refuse. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And damaging to the environment.
And butterflies.
So, but below the tree is a great big bed. So I can't really pick up all the little, the leaves are falling in clumps where they got that webbing. Yeah, so I presume if I clean those up, I would prevent some of the overwintering. But I'm not going to clean up that whole bed. Long story short, I'm afraid that someday that honey locust is just going to continue to weaken from these mimosa webworms if they don't die off one winter. Mm-hmm. So I thought I should go out 10 feet arc from that honey locust. And then 10 feet apart along that arc, I should plant 3 acorns. Okay. And so then one day, if that honey locust were to die, I would have 3 oak trees to form a grove there. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I think I'm going to actually do it.
Okay, you do it. I mean, here's my question for you though. Will it shade all your garden beds? Because eventually they're going to get big, but probably not in your lifetime.
Well, right now, the honey locust is doing a pretty good job of putting a lot of shade, more shade than I would like on that plopper's field. So it's like, well, I'll just kind of keep shifting those further back in the garden, back by where the vegetable garden is, if I want more sun loving. And if it converts to shade, it converts to shade. That's okay.
So I'm going to talk to my son about this because, he just bought a house and he wanted to plant an oak tree or a maple. He was thinking about a caddo maple, which is a great tree, by the way, if you can find it. But what I might suggest to him, because he said he hurt his back, so you really can't dig a big giant hole. So I might suggest to him this information from Doug Tallamy, and he could definitely plant acorns from his parents' house and then he would have this thing. So I'll just suggest it to him and see what he says. Yeah. He could create a little grove in his front yard.
The Nature of Oaks by Douglas W. Tallamy. You should look at that.
Great book.
He's got information on how to plant your acorns, the whole shebang. He's got lists by state of good oaks to grow. So there you go.
Cool.
That was the book.
Shall we move on to our rabbit holes?
We should.
This is going to be the world's longest podcast.
It is.
All right. So in connection with everything we've been doing and reading, which I finished Jayber Crow, and in the process of reading Jayber Crow and Pastoral Song, which some of our listeners have been reading it, and then they text me and tell me that it's making them cry. Pastoral Song will make you cry. It will, if you care about the world. But then you'll be filled with joy if you can just get past the crying part. So all of us can make a change. The point of that is I got this idea and I decided I needed a new set of sheets because my sheets have gotten old. And so I saw an ad for Redland cotton sheets, which are not just made in the United States. The cotton is grown in the United States by some Alabama farmers. And now they've gotten so popular that there are Georgia farmers involved and all that kind of stuff. And I think they're called Redland because they have red dirt like Oklahoma. I'm not positive about that, but I'm guessing.
Yeah. And red clay of Georgia. Sure.
The red clay of Georgia, and Alabama has red dirt too, some places. So anyway, what finally sold me on the idea was a reviewer said they reminded him of his grandmother's sheets. And my grandmother had thick white cotton sheets that I loved. Well, I can tell you, and I got nothing. I mean, I bought these sheets and they're really expensive, but I just decided to put my money where my mouth was. And I used some of my money from garden coaching and I bought a set of the sheets. The sheets are fabulous. They're just fabulous. And they're that thick, good cotton, which you might think is hot, but it's not hot. And the cotton's grown in the United States. And it's also all produced in everything from the plant to the sheets is done in the US, which I thought was really cool and helped American farmers. So then I got the idea that I wanted a cotton blanket because I loved the cotton sheets so much. And I went to a company that's called the American Blanket Company. By the way, both of these companies also have other items, like Redland Cotton Sheets also has towels and stuff like that. But American Blanket Company, I ordered it. It's all produced in the United States. I assume the cotton is grown here too, but I don't know. Their big thing is it's all made here. That's the best blanket I've ever owned. And that's the truth. It's got a nice kind of, because it's cotton, it's kind of got a heavy feel like a quilt, which I love, but it's not hot. And that's great because Bill and I are both hot sleepers. He especially is. Anyway, I crawl into that bed at night and I'm really grateful. And I'm helping farmers in the United States.
Yeah, and we should tell people we'll provide links to these companies, but we are not making a thing off of it. This is not an affiliate link. This is just like, Dee found these great sheets. I'm going to check it out. I don't really
They're
need
not
any new sheets, but I'm going to check it out.
Well, I've decided that eventually I'm going to buy the ticking stripe ones later, but right now they're our favorite sheets. And Bill even said something about it. And when I told him that they were grown in the United States and made in the United States, he really loved that too.
Nice.
Got to support our farmers.
I have some of my grandmother's sheets from the 70s.
Lucky you.
Well, I found out from some lady I met at a writing workshop. She sold vintage fabrics on the side. And she said, oh, those are worth some money because there's some sort of, yellow flower print. Anyway.
Cool.
I'm not selling
My grandmother just did white sheets, but they were super thick and wonderful. And I loved them. So that's what sold me on it. And then I thought, heck yeah.
These are probably some poly blend or something.
So what have you been rabbit holing?
So I am down in the rabbit hole of books by naturalists. So
Boy, you are.
I read The Nature of Oaks by Doug Tallamy, and then I listened to Bringing Nature Home. Listened to the whole thing while I was out there gardening, which led me to listen to Aldo Leopold's classic, A Sand County Almanac, which is very, very good. It's, he's a naturalist and he lived up in Wisconsin. Cool. And I think he's the most famous naturalist that nobody's ever heard of. But as soon as you listen to a Sand County Almanac, you're like, oh my God, shades of Wendell Berry and all those good people.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's not very long. And I actually slowed it down to like 1 1/4 speed and still managed to listen to it yesterday and today. And I think I'm going to listen to it again before I return it back to the library.
That's cool.
But when I was at the library, I picked up another book, Tales from the Ant World by Edward O. Wilson, who is you also never heard of him. I can tell by your face. He's a world-renowned Pulitzer Prize-winning entomologist and author, and he's an ant expert. And so this book came out.
You know what? I think I saw him interviewed on something not too long ago. That's actually why I was making that face, because he was talking about how ants, according to what this guy that was interviewed, he's an expert on ants and how they communicate. And he said that unlike honeybees, they're not as organized, but they communicate by pheromones, but they still get things done. And he actually compared ants to people.
Oh, yeah. So his book is a little bit autobiographical.
Graphical.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it came out in 2020. And, you read a book like that and you think, oh, what have I done with my life? Because look at this guy. And he was born in 1929, same year as my mother. He's still alive. He still wrote a book. He writes his books out longhand, he said.
Wow.
But he starts off and he starts off with about the ants. Basically, he said we would not want to mimic ant society.
No, it's a mess.
Well, you wouldn't, because the women do absolutely everything.
Yeah, so
all the men are there for is to impregnate the queen.
Exactly like honeybees.
And instead of sending the youngest, bravest, or the youngest, most fit ants out to battle, they send the old ones.
Yeah, same thing in honeybee land. Yeah.
So
they're the foragers and the guards because, well, they don't have, the way they view the world is that they're expendable.
So anyway, the rabbit hole has led me to Edward O. Wilson and that book, Tales from the Ant World, which I'm halfway through. And then, I'll be on YouTube looking for all kinds of interviews with him. And he just seems like quite the character. But he's been all over the world studying ants, especially fire ants. He stuck his arm, a live camera thing. He stuck his arm down in a fire ant colony to see what it would be like.
We ran into fire ants one time when we were somewhere.
It was horrible, by the way.
It was down in Texas. Yeah, it hurts anyway. So are you through talking about Edward? Because we have other bug people to talk about.
Yes, so that's all about my rabbit hole. That's my rabbit hole. Oh my God, you found the nicest documentary, the cutest couple.
It's our dirt this week. Oh my gosh, God. They're adorable. And everybody needs to go watch it. It's free. It's Point of View, POV, which is a PBS thing, a show, and it's called The Love Bugs. And it's about Lois and Charlie O'Brien. And they were married for 60 years. And over that 60 years, they collected the largest private collection of insects. And it became a scientific game changer because it had more than 1 million specimens. and they had more than 1,000 undiscovered species. And she was a scientist who collected plant hoppers, which we call leaf hoppers sometimes.
Right.
And he collected weevils.
Oh my gosh.
And you guys might think it's gross or boring, but it is not boring. They are adorable characters in this, and they're married forever. And it's all about when they decided to give their collection to Arizona State University. Yes. And because they got old, and they had all this, and she had made all the drawers for their collection. Anyway, they love each other. They were dedicated to each other. And then the scientists come to visit, and it's the most adorable thing, because you talk about people who are geeking out.
They were, oh my God, they loved that couple. They took care of him. Yeah. And they were just like, oh my gosh. But it was amazing. Absolutely.
They moved them
amazing.
to a retirement community nearby the university so that they could talk to them, because her stuff is really important and his stuff is really important. And they wanted to make sure they got as much information as possible. And if you think insect collecting is boring, no, it's not.
Oh my gosh. And the stuff they did. Anyway, we love that. I love that. I'm going to watch it again.
I am too. It was precious. All right. Garden commissions.
Okay. You go first.
Okay. I need to plant that other hydrangea, but I don't know where I'm going to put it.
In the ground.
Am still funny. I'm still pulling weeds. I also have some daylilies to plant that I bought a while back and over summered in pots. But I have to unearth the little garden I made for Bill's mom first. And I might I'm thinking about it. I might put that hydrangea over where I had some dahlias, because I'm ready to give up on dahlias in my garden. It is just too hot at night. They just can't handle it. So anyway, it's covered with native ageratum, which I've got to pull up. And I should have plenty of time to do this and take cuttings and put them in the greenhouse bit by bit. It takes a while.
It does. An hour a day. That's what I'm going to do. An hour a day, repeat. An hour a day, repeat. Move some more daylilies, because when I got that Amsonia out of there, I can see little, I don't know if these daylilies dried back in the drought and then they're sending up new little leaves, but it's like they're getting moved. Give them some space. I'm going to mow, of course. And this new week, also on Friday morning, I'm giving that keynote for the Ohio State Master Gardeners. And so I'll be doing that, finishing up that. That's my week.
You are busy, and I wish I could listen to your talk for the Ohio State Master Gardeners on Friday.
Maybe they'll record it. I don't know. Anyway, we want to thank you for listening to the Garden Angelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links to the information about today's topics, plus links to our own website. And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links, especially to books. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission. It costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.